What a sweet time, everybody, this morning. So good to be meeting with the Lord and hearing what He has to say. And, I want to speak about really the marks of a healthy church or the marks of a healthy family, because we're going to be going into churches, and our whole passion is to see churches that are on fire for Jesus, churches that are healthy. I'm sure I've told you before about a news story I read about an Arctic expedition team. They were on foot and they were hoping to make it to the North Pole in record time. But each day they thought there was something wrong with their GPS, because when they looked at their GPS, they knew they had traveled 30, 40 kilometers one day, but the GPS said that they were further south the next day. And this went on day after day, and eventually they discovered what was happening was that the ice floe was moving faster south than they could actually walk north. And that's where we are as churches today. Culture all around us is changing, and, we are, taking a little stroll with Jesus. We're thinking these days He's needing us to run hard for Him and to see the advancement of the kingdom of God amongst us. And we can't just tread water. We need to be running hard for Jesus. And the reality is that we never drift into health. No church ever just falls into health. Nobody ever finds themselves falling into fitness. Has anybody ever woken up, guys, with the guns? Have you ever woken up one morning and suddenly the guns have appeared? The barrel has turned into a six-pack, and that never happens automatically. We need to be intentional. And when we think about church health, there's so many false marks, false paradigms that people have when they're considering church health. And we need to be careful we don't go in with those lenses when we're going in to help churches. Like sometimes people think, but our church is growing. If I was pushing the envelope today, I would put some photographs up there from the internet with people with nice big growths, but I'm growing. There's something growing out of me here. Can't you not see that, I'm growing, yeah. Or I'm growing, yeah. But not all growth is good growth. And sometimes we'll look at the amount of spectators. Have you seen how many spectators they have? They can gather 5,000 spectators on a Sunday morning. But that isn't healthy growth. Because the kingdom's all about participators. Or maybe they point you to their past successes, and the church has become a museum about what used to happen here. But what about today? Or maybe the lead guy is influential in politics and government ministers will listen. Surely this is a healthy church because the government of the land, he has their ear. Or maybe the amount of albums or book sales that the church is able to make in a year. What are the marks of a healthy church? I think it's Mark Deaver has this book, The 9 Marks of a Healthy Church. And I'm not going to refer to at all otherwise that book today. But often when we're looking at the marks of a healthy church, we'll look at Acts 2, 42, 47, or maybe Acts 4. And those are great lenses. But today, I really want to focus on thinking about the church in a different way. There are different images of the church in the Bible. The church is a flock with shepherds, isn't that right? That's one good picture. The church is a building with stones. The church is a body with many parts. The church isn't an institution or a business or an organization. The church is a family. This is our family, just in case you didn't know that. And I think the biggest impact that 412 has had on us is us as a family. You can talk about the church changing and things like that, but where the leaders go, the church goes. And so I think, if you speak to my wife, not that I'm going to give her the microphone just in case, but if you speak to my wife and, I remember the first time in Cape Town sitting with Andrew and MC, having lived in their home for a week, and Andrew and MC sitting us down last day over coffee, and very humbly Andrew saying, have you seen anything in our marriage, Jonathan and Annette, that could be improved? Nope, nope, nope. Anything in our parenting of Enya? Nope. Are you sure? And then I was so stupid. And then immediately after that pregnant pause, Andrew said, well, thank you. Well, there's just a few things we have seen about you that we would like to, yeah, that we would like to speak into. Yeah, so just watch out for that one. Yes, watch out. But genuinely, it doesn't happen all the time. There's mystery. God put Adam and Eve in the garden, the perfect father in the perfect environment, and his kids messed up. But all things being equal, what we have seen is our marriage coming alive and our kids coming alive. That was our oldest daughter, got married in Southern California in October time, as you can see, suffering for Jesus in that weather there in October. Yeah. In winter, yeah. So married to Nick. Nick's here. He's arrived. Caitlin needs her visa at the moment. And so they're serving on what will be Andrew's church. And there, and onto the far right, Johnny and Anna, and they're deacons in one of our congregations. And he's preaching this Sunday. And Phoebe to the far left is 16, just got her driving license. Help us, Jesus. Yeah, and she's in the worship team, and Megan's just graduating this year. And seeing our kids, Andrew would talk to us. I remember that conference when that daughter came alive, or that daughter came alive. And I think as we go in and help churches think about health, there's no better lens at times than when you're thinking about health to think about family. Yeah, you can do Acts 2, 42, 47, and the big teach, and expository, and all that type of thing, and Acts 4, and other things. But I think one of the lenses that might help is to think of the health of this church. In what way does this church look like a healthy family? And so that's all I want to do today, this morning, give you a simple lens, something that's quite, I'm simple, so keep it simple, stupid, saints, yeah. So, just a simple lens to go in. And there's just maybe some key words around family. It's by no means an exhaustive way or lens of looking at family, but just a few ways of looking. Because, when we were reconciled to God, we were reconciled to the Father, and we were brought into his family. That's one of the key images of what salvation means. And in Ephesians chapter 2, 19 to 20, Paul writes, so then you're no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God. We belong to a new household built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Christ Jesus himself being the cornerstone. So it's all about family. I think health in the church is all about family. When we pray, I remember in school praying that prayer. Remember, you ever taught that prayer in school? Our Father, yeah. I mean, just that prayer Jesus taught his disciples to pray, it was all about family, Father. And then when the Holy Spirit comes into our lives, he actually takes over. And again, it's all about, he wants us to get family because the Spirit cries out within us what? He cries out, Abba, Father. And of course, the language is all about sons and daughters, isn't it? Sometime when you meet somebody, I think many churches think they are family, but you ever been in that situation where you meet somebody and they say, hey, brother, how are you, brother? How are you, sister? And it's all because you just don't know their names, And so it's a superficial way of thinking, oh, we are family, yes. And what we often say on the Isle of Man is, we're not like a family, we are family, yeah. That's our little motif. We're not like a family, but we are family. I'm back leading a congregation for the last, 18 months, and we've kind of gone through this growth spurt on the Isle of Man and UK generally. It is the dark continent, Europe, with a few little Bible Belt spots. But over the last 18 months, we've seen a bit of a growth spurt happening from September to February. I've brought in my congregation 50 new members have gone through like our equivalent of starting point, come into membership. For us, that's uncommon. So I remember about 6-8 weeks ago, I'm only in our congregation 2 Sundays a month at the moment, and at the end of the service, this guy coming up to me, he's a tall, slim African guy, and I've clearly never met him before, and I just bluntly say, are are you from East Africa? That was me, kind of being sensitive to. And he says, yes, I'm from Rwanda. My wife, we've moved here with our 3 kids. And we're loving it. First time in the church. This is going to be my church. I never met the guy before in my life. He says, but I have a problem. We've been able to afford rent for 2 weeks, but we can't get a rental property. And there's a real shortage where we live at the moment. We can't get a rental property, and it's £200 a night. Multiply that by 24 if you're working in rands. Yeah. And we're getting kicked out of our Airbnb on Tuesday. Can you help? And I'm sitting thinking, oh my goodness. And so I phoned, they say an Englishman's home is his castle. And so I phoned this man called Paul Castle, who's one of our deacons. And he's 70-year-old. He's a widower, maybe the last 5 years a widower. And I say, Paul, remember 2 years ago when that Nigerian family came and there were 4 kids and actually they never even hit church. Just one of our people said, oh, we know a family that can't get their housing sorted out yet. Do you remember you put them up, Paul? He said, yeah. And I paid for their deposit for their house, for 3 months. And they paid it back to me over a 3 or 4 month period and all this type of thing. Well, you know what? We got another couple from Rwanda. Now, we do not know them. We've never met them. Don't have a letter of commendation from their elders or anything. They've just pitched up in church. I just met the husband. I don't know about the wife. I think she's working in a bank, but Can you take them in? And he says, I'll phone them this afternoon. He phones them that afternoon. He visits them on the Monday, and he brings them into his house on a Tuesday. On Friday morning, we have prayer meetings across the island on Friday mornings before work at all the congregations. And the guy from Rwanda, his name's Bosco. That's what I call him, Bosco. And they're in the prayer meeting, and they all hear, oh, they're living with Paul? Right. And then an older couple in their 70s again say, we're trying to sell a house in Douglas, but we need to do renovations at the moment. Do they want to move into it? And so the next week, painting and decorating teams go in, the gas is reconnected, and Bosco, wife, and 3 kids go into the house. That's where they are at the moment, yeah. And people have, been supplying furniture and all those sorts of things. That's a picture of family. People you'd never met. It's not even they're in the same partnership of churches of you. They say they go to church. Nearly every African I meet says they're a Christian. If they're not a Christian, they're a Muslim. But that's family. And we have story after story in our partnership. Go to South Carolina. A young couple moved from one part of the world to South Carolina, working, helping in the church, housing issues. A couple they've never met before who are deacons in the church say, we'll give you $30,000 so you can buy that house for your deposit. I'm just trying to give you an image of what family in the kingdom looks like. So as we think about family today, I have just some key words. It's not a highly polished message or anything like that. Just some key words I want us to think about as we go into churches. And in the first instance, let me be honest, people will stay in a family like that. People will stay in a family like that. So I just want to give a few, I don't know how many, but we'll see how many we can do. Ryan will shut me up in due season, yes, yeah. When I think about family, just one phrase comes to mind, the Father's ways. A family lives by the Father's ways. Our culture at the moment is if you feel good, do it. It's all about pragmatism, and time and again, Andrew's taken us to the story in 2 Samuel chapter 6 of Uzzah's ox cart, and there the presence of God is being put on this vehicle that's used for business. It's supposed to be carried by the priests, Levites on poles, etc. But the people just think, well, we need to get the presents somehow back to the house so we can do it the way every business person does it in our nations and in our communities. And we kind of see the impact of what happens when we don't do things in accordance with the Father's ways. Yeah. And what my girls know, I've got 4 daughters, as you saw in the photograph, they know that whilst they live under my roof, that there's ways of our household. There's values in our household which are non-negotiable. Yeah. And when I think about, examining, going into a church, is this church living in obedience to the Father's ways? That's a very big picture, but a broad brushstroke. And that's how Jesus lived. Jesus himself said in John 5 and verse 19, so Jesus explained, I tell you the truth, the Son can do nothing by himself. He does only what he sees the Father doing. That's how Jesus lived. What's the Father want? What's the Father do? That's when I'm going to give him a time to every single day. That wasn't my experience in ministry. I was the copycat, where it was working anywhere. What was Saddleback doing? Let's copy that. What was Willow Creek doing? Let's copy that. What's Life Church doing? Let's copy that. Maybe I can just copy what they're doing. Maybe the same thing will happen with us. But I was copying, perhaps in some ways, to some degree, what God was doing somewhere else. But I actually wasn't seeking what the Father's doing for myself. And so Jesus was always seeking out, what does the Father want? What are the ways of the Father? And not what is happening somewhere else, but what are the Father's ways for us? And similarly, we're like that for the church. The Father sends the Son, and then the Spirit has been sent. And in Romans chapter 8, it says that for all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. And so in every church that we go into, that's what we're thinking. Is this church led by the Spirit of God? Every single day, in every single decision, in every single meeting, are we being led by the Spirit in our decisions? And actually, it's not that we're led by the Bible, but we're led by the Spirit. We'll never go beyond what the Bible says, but we're led by the Spirit. What is the Spirit saying in this moment? In a moment like we just had in a corporate service, the Spirit could say, landed. Or next week, in an identical moment, the Spirit could say, scrap the preach, as Jonathan, just keep going. And the Bible isn't going to give an answer for that. And that's the ways of the Father for his church. We're building in the Spirit. We're being led by the Spirit. And as Andrew keeps saying, everything, we need to have plans. If there weren't plans for this week, these sessions wouldn't be recorded. We wouldn't have had the nice bride the other night. And if there wasn't structure in place, but these plans need to be in pencil. And we are always open up to what the Spirit is saying. Yeah. So when I go into the church, that's what I'm thinking. Is this church following the Father's values, the Father's ways? That's what I'm thinking. Is that helpful? And then every family is led by parents. That's where I'm looking at as well. An authentic leadership team in a church has, all things being equal, husbands and wives. You have your husband as the elder, but two have become one. Seems a bit strange to me if you're one, but actually, if your wife's somewhere else. And so, like, mom and dad need to be present. Mom and dad need to be present with the kids. Mom and dad need to live their lives with the kids. And we need moms as well, because, as maybe Ryan says, he says, I'm a strong leader, but if I am a strong leader, then you're going to need to have those other voices, like a mother hen gathering the chicks. You're going to need to have those other voices around you to bring balance into the team as well. If you're dealing with church discipline, we'll talk about that hopefully in the next little while. If you're dealing with church discipline, it may be some of us are very strong and have a sense of right and wrong, but mercy triumphs. Maybe mercy goes before your throne. And so we need to be, what are the mums and dads like? Are they shepherds or are they ranchers? We've talked about this. Shepherds in Luke's gospel, they're in the fields. They're in the fields at night. They're keeping a watch over their flocks. Ranchers are safe in the homestead. But shepherds are out there smelling of the sheep, living with the sheep. They know every single sheep. They're not in the green room. They haven't locked themselves away into the study, but they're actually with the sheep. What about the parents in this house? Because it's actually going to be how people parent that qualifies us in our nuclear families for leadership or not. And we're not like boarding school parents. Forgive me if your kids are at boarding school, but I don't think that's how God wants us to lead churches or families. Where you send your kids away, somebody else parents them for you, and then they come back, and then you spoil them for a season, and then you send them off again. No, your kids need to be with you. So let's look at this the double way. So in the nuclear family, you need to be in your kids' lives every day. I was up in crowded house, and one of their, probably he's a deacon, has like the Groeschel guns. You know what I mean? Those big guns, right? Popping out of his t-shirt. You don't get those by going to the gym once every 3 months. You get them by, You have to get to the gym every day. And you don't get healthy kids by parenting them intensely every 3 months and then sending them somewhere else to be parented in between. So in churches, just to remind us, some maybe are new, that the churches are led by elders. When people get saved, then you put elders around that, mums and dads around that, the husband leading. Like Paul says to Titus, this is why I left you in Crete, that you might put what remained in the order and appoint elders in every town as I directed you. Yeah. To help the mums and dads in the church, that you need deacons, don't you? And in many ways, so deacons aren't the mums and dads, but they are the older brothers and sisters in the life of the church that stop things escalating, that catch things very early. And we had that little blip, that it was only one afternoon. She's a saint, but we had that little blip, just because the older sisters weren't acting on our behalf. And I think as you're looking at churches, how the mums and dads doing, yes. How the parents doing, how the deacons doing with mum. Are they catching the staff, or is everything being dealt with by the elders? That can be a scary thing. In Acts chapter 6, the deacons were the ones fighting for unity. That was their thing. The elders need to be doing these things, but actually the deacons are going to fight for unity in this congregation, ensure that both lots of groups are equally cared for. Yeah. And did I say my Phoebe is a saint? Did I say that? Just in case my wife bats me. Yeah. But families need parents. Let me say family. So first thing, maybe just to drop in, I've already said, families need both parents. There's something wrong in this church if it's just the men. You need husbands and wives working together. And you need the older brothers and sisters like the deacons working closely with the mums and dads to just help disciple the kids. Yeah. Paul says, 1 Corinthians 4:15, though you have countless guides in Christ, you don't have many fathers, and I became your father in Christ through the gospel. How do we become good fathers and mothers and even older brothers and sisters in the house? Well, I think, to be honest, love is spelled T-I-M-E. The bottom line is it's time and it's being interested in what your kids are doing. We are staying with a great host family. I haven't asked permission for this, but it's a good story, so I'm sure it'll be okay. If not, you can edit it out. But the couple we were staying with is Dave and Keena, yeah. And Dave was telling me that, over the dinner table, you can talk so much with your kids. But his little boy now goes out running with him early in the morning. And he says he wants to go running, so I go running with him. And in the context of just sharing what he's enjoying, suddenly his little boy is opening up about all the things that are going on in his life. So it's one thing to stand at the front on a Sunday. It's another thing to invite them into your home on a Wednesday night. But actually, the place that you're really going to find out how the kids are doing is when you're taking an interest in what they're interested in. When you're prioritizing their sports day, when you're prioritizing, we would love to be going, I'm on sabbatical this summer, I'd love to be going to the America a whole lot sooner. I'm just going to go to rub some suntan lotion on Andrew, so yeah. Because he thought he wasn't going to preach again. After this, he's going to preach again. Yeah. But it's Phoebe's prom. We're not going anywhere until Phoebe does her prom. Even last year when we were in the States, that's when she bought her prom dress. A year ahead. Just think about that's what they're thinking, You've got daughters, you got debt. Yeah, so, yeah. Yeah, yes, yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Does that help? Yeah, parents. So I'm looking through the lens of how are couples doing generally, but then how are they parenting in the house of God as well? And another word when I think about families is intimacy. I am as you see, even in the way this message is organized, I'm systematic, but my default bends that way, yeah. But we can't be, we're a family. We're not an organization. We're not a business. And so you need to be careful, like intimacy. Like, how close are we as team and people in the life of the church? We employ with other churches what's called a safeguarding officer. Safeguarding is a big issue in our cultural context, for abuse and all those types of things. And so he's employed by 4 churches, one of which is Living Hope. And every year we invite him to our staff Christmas meal. And every year he says exactly the same thing. He says, "You're the only church that invites me." I'm sitting in my office with my party hat on and I'm a cracker and stuff by myself, but you're the only church that invites me. Yeah. And so I'm thinking about how, are they having fun together? Is there intimacy together in that way? Look at how Paul talks about Timothy in Philippians 2:20-22. "For I have no one like him who will be genuinely concerned for your welfare, for they all seek their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ, but Timothy's proven worth, how as a son with a father he has served me with the gospel." And that's what I mean about intimacy, that close relationship. Doesn't mean that, hopefully it doesn't mean on your day off you have to spend time with each other. Yes. But it does mean that you're loving one another, you're valuing one another, you're sharing life, you're sharing your hearts. When you're going through stuff, you're actually sharing the process. This is what we're struggling with. This is in our family, marriage. These are the decisions. Like Chris and Carol have brought something up. An older, I'll just say it guarded. An old, Chris's mother's still alive, widow. Issues around how can we care and things that we're talking about those things as family together, rather than just informing one another of decisions. Yeah. And I think intimacy happens around, I think it's the table, it's the dinner table. I think that type of culture where we're eating food together. That's why all our comms start with food. And it can be a struggle. I have a great friend, but I remember a couple in our comm were getting married in Las Vegas. Long story. But anyway, we don't have Elvis in our church. So Las Vegas. And so at the end of the call, we said, "Hey, let's have a bit of a party, some party games, and as soon as we said that, the guy that loved the word and he was out of the room, he was home. Because He operates well in that functional place, but not in that fun and friendship place. So how's the team doing here? Are they functional? Is that it? Or is there intimacy within the team? Would they want to go on holidays together? If they could go on holidays, together, would they be able to get on together, etc.? Just be kind of looking through that lens. And then another word I have in my mind is reproduction. And I think this is the key one. All things being equal, either naturally or through adoption, etc. When people get married, they reproduce. Yeah, all things being equal. And the gospel is described as seed. Seed bears fruit. And in the early church in Acts 2:41, it says, and those who received his word were baptized, and there were added that day about 3,000 souls. Is this church reproducing? Like recently, Chris's daughter and son-in-law, or my congregation, deacons, and their calm birthed 3 new calms. Wow. Now, 2 years ago was the last thing they wanted to do was to lead their calm, and you have to walk them through that, but see the Lord. But their calm, is that what's happening, or is it just these calms like 20 years ago, it was us 4 and no more? Today, it's us 4 and no more. Are we reproducing? And I think one of the great challenges that may not be as relevant in Southern Africa, is the whole idea that we're, in many nations, we're living post-Christendom. Christianity came to the Isle of Man in about 450 AD. You can see Celtic crosses from that time. And so you had 1,500 years of Christendom where many of our nations were functioning like the Bible Belt. Okay, that's how we were functioning. South Africa's trajectory may be away from that, but it's still Bible Belt enough. There's some key indicators around that. And where we are, generally, people aren't looking for a church. In many parts of Southern Africa, people are looking for a church. However, in Europe, generally, except for a few exceptions, it is the dark continent. But the reality is that most elders, most pastors have been trained to lead churches in Christendom rather than leading churches post-Christendom. Most pastors, elders see themselves as chaplains, like a hospital chaplain. There. Let's just keep you comfortable. Let's not stretch you. This is my little charge. And churches are closing at a faster rate that we've never seen before. I think, but when you look at many churches, you're kind of wondering, when was this elder the last time with sinners and tax collectors? And he's locked away in his study, and he does his thing on a Sunday, but there's nothing reproducing here. Now, Andrew's been saying we change the church one person at a time. And I really, Chris and I have been reflecting, and he was in Durbanville on Sunday, and he said they were so good at that. But I tell you, every time a new person comes into our building, we are smelling the blood. I got a report last night from one of my deacons. So positively, our people are trained well enough that if a new person comes, I'm thinking about a guy that came recently, one of our single guys immediately says, do you want to go out to lunch? So most things should happen organically. But because we've seen this wave of new people, our bones are creaking. I've had to say to the deacons, I need you to be on top of this because the Lord is entrusting us with these first-time guests. And I don't want to breach his trust. I don't want to have a kind of a laissez-faire attitude towards new people. And so last night I'm in bed, did a little bit of prep for today, and I'm looking through, here's the new people from last Sunday, the 10th, and here is how they were followed up, and they've connected to a community group, bump, bump, bump. I'm seeing this person on Friday for lunch. Oh, and here's the people from this week. We have our first Mozambique person in the church. We have 25 probably nationalities or more. Her kids were born in Angola, so I'm claiming that as well, yeah. But that's, when you go into the church, is this church, are these people front-footed? Every time there's somebody preaching, even if it's tithing, are they casting out the net every single time? Are the community groups for the chosen frozen, or are they looking to connect new people? And what about the new people? Now, the church isn't run by systems, but the way it's happening for us at the moment, we need to support the organic with a bit of structure around it, because we've never seen this. We've never seen what we're seeing at the moment. And we want to be faithful what the Lord has given us and stewarded well. So are we thinking that way, or are we kind of just thinking, hey, we're Bible Belt muscle by. We're Bible Belt, yeah. Hey, there's another 10 today. I wonder if we'll see them next week. Now, there needs to be a balance. You'll meet somebody and you'll discover, are they biting? So I remember a family from Johannesburg just moved in 2 Sundays ago. They have a teenage son. Our young guys play soccer on a Monday night. I'm saying, we have soccer on a Monday night if your son's interested. Yeah, we'll see you next week. Okay, so I know. But then there are other people, like Peter and Doreen. Peter's from Kenya, Doreen's from Rwanda, first Sunday in the church. Yeah, we've got our membership course over lunch today. No, I'm coming. This is my church. This is first Sunday. No, you haven't even heard what our church believes. Nobody says, I see what you believe. Because as a black man coming to the Isle of Man, I thought I was going to be discriminated against. I've come into this place today. I mean, this is a true story. When did he arrive? Probably early October. Baby called Anchor, as in the Hebrews, the boat Anchor. Born in December. Last 2 Sundays he's in the worship team. And so as you go into the church, are they reproducing? Are they hungry for the lost? Do they have the Father's heart for the prodigals? Or are we just doing church? Let me be honest, particularly you guys in Bible Belt, or is that how we're treating first-time guests when they come through? Maybe they'll come next week? Or are we right there? Is somebody trying to immediately get them out for a coffee, get them out for lunch? We're thinking, I want to get them in the community group this week. That is our goal. And I don't want them to be, I'm not building towards me. We need to get them in the community group, not some type of subgroup for new people. I want to get them embedded into the life of church, meeting people different from them and just like them. So how pregnant are we? How fertile are we at the moment? And then this is a word I've brought, but I'm not going to expand too much on it because I might get in trouble. But when we do reproduce, are we simply reproducing clones? People just like us. I mean, the church is a family of nations. And it used to be you had to go to the nations, and we still do go to the nations, yeah. It used to be you had to go to the nations. But actually today, for most of us, the nations are on our doorstep as well. Hands up if you have nations, as in more than 6 other nations, in the vicinity within 10 Ks of your church. Other nations. Come on, boldly. You've got other nations like Malawi. Say you're in South Africa, Malawi, Zimbabwe, etc. But you know what I see across Europe and often when I come to Africa is homogenous congregations, generally. That the weight is towards just people like me. Socioeconomic backgrounds. And here's I kind of test this and then speak to Andrew. If I say, and I have a friend who goes to a biker church in Johannesburg. You would say to me, biker church, Jonathan, that's building around an idol. That's building around an affinity. But what if we don't realize that if our churches look like people just like me, that's an affinity, isn't it? Maybe actually more of us, maybe we don't realize that, and that's what I'm saying. I'm speaking about this because something's happened to us, and we're really having to embrace it. It's just and it is a nightmare at the same time when you've got all these cultures. And Andrew was talking about that, all things to all men. My goodness, I'm going to be schizophrenic, I'm going to have 25 personality disorders, And And it is a nightmare, but it's the way of the kingdom, isn't it? That in heaven, every tribe, every tongue. In fact, the homogenous Jesus doesn't want Babel. We're all coming together. We're all going to speak one. No. I want to have this variety in the world. So that means when we're reproducing, yeah. Is it people just like us? Monocultural idols. A healthy family does carry the parents. I mean, you reach who you are to a degree. But if I had 4 daughters, you saw my 4 daughters there, and they all looked the same, you'd be thinking, Jonathan, did you marry your cousin? And what about in the life of the church? Have we done that in the life? Is that how when we're reproducing in the life of the church? Is potentially that one of our issues? That we're not, I'm in this area where I've got now I'm sure there's over 50 nationalities, but we've got over 25 nationalities. And it's not just nationalities, it's socioeconomic groups and things like that. And I'm not talking about affirmative action and those types of, I'm just talking about the kingdom. Like if Jesus is presented, every knee will bow. If Jesus is the first thing people experience, they're not going to be looking, is it a white guy there? Is it a black guy? Is it that type of music? If it's Jesus that's there, then people will start to work out these other things. Is that making sense? I'm trying to say it in a nice way. I'm not trying to beat us up, but we do need to reflect. I'll say it again. If like my mate, he goes to biker church, we're right in there saying, biker church. I know what type of people go to that church. 50-something, born-again bikers, beards. Smell of leather and body odor. But I don't think we have the courage at times to look at our own congregations. There was a church in Isle of Man at one time, a lovely church, Baptist church. Its nickname was the Irish Embassy. Because the 2 pastors were Irish. And for a season, all they had was people just like them. What about us? Healthy church. Not only is it reproducing, not only are our leaders, not only leaders setting the way. Uncle Will laughed and encouraged me once. 10 years ago, we had 3 or 4 congregations. I'm in a box in our, what's called Strand Street, High Street with Phoebe, giving out invitations. Because I know I'm not an evangelist, but I know I need to do the work of an evangelist. I know I need to kind of plant seeds, come to our church, come to our one on Sunday. I know I need to do that. So is this church reproducing? Are the leaders more front-footed than their people? When new people come to the church, are leaders ensuring, and is it more than just systems, is everybody welcoming them, trying to pull them in? And I think it is a prophetic word for us as we move forward. Are we reproducing also people more than just like us? Or is it just going to be another guy with a surfboard arriving? How much are we reaching? And it's a nightmare, all things to all men. And then it comes to parenting as well. When you think about a family, then you're going to look through the eyes of parenting. How are these kids are the kids sharing the values? Are they just gathering for the music, gathering for the vibe, gathering for the social thing? Or are the values being held in the hearts? Are the kids being parented? Or are they intentionally passing on the values? Or just hoping that something might happen? Paul writes to Timothy, 2 Timothy 2:2. And the things you have heard from me, say in the presence of many witnesses, and trust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others. Today we've chatted about this. Today's church is what's called trajectory theology. For instance, I've told you we need to have men and women But actually, the trajectory theology of today is, the first person to tell the disciples that Jesus was alive was a woman. So because a woman does that, women should be leading. That is the trajectory we are going. That's the way most churches work. But Paul says, no, it isn't that way. No, the things that you've heard from me, that I heard from Jesus, no, you need to teach to reliable people, and then they'll teach the same things to other reliable people. You know, this word of God isn't changing. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 4:17, that's why I've sent Timothy, my beloved and faithful child in the Lord. I think Ryan quoted this yesterday. He will remind you of how I follow Christ Jesus, just as I teach in all the churches wherever I go. And there are gray areas. Andrew touched on those yesterday. There may be gray areas around things like tattoos or meat, drink, etc. But the majority of the Bible is black and white. It's not the gray areas that we struggle with. It's the black and white areas that we struggle with. And so are these parents instilling within the kids? Are the kids devoting themselves? Are they carrying it from the inside out, not having to be whipped by the elders? Are these sheepy, are the spiritual offspring inside? When you cut them, are they bleeding the same values, the same doctrines as the parents in the church? Yeah. I'm going to whiz on here. Just as it says a few words. Discipline. Yeah, do you like that word? I remember one of our guys, we have gypsies in our church as well. Right, gypsies, that's another demographic, okay? 4 or 5 families of gypsies. I remember one of the patriarchs of the family saying, Jonathan, our grandkids are just terrorists. They're wild. And he was asking for help on that. So when it comes to discipline, in the life of the church, you go to supermarkets and little 2-year-olds throw tantrums and you start to see these parents throwing chocolate at the 2-year-olds. Is that how we're disciplining in the life of the church? Just anything to keep them quiet? Anything to control their behavior? If they're really going off on one, do you give them we have a thing called calpol, spiritual calpol. It's like your kids, I think Hannes must use that in his. Yeah. You kind of, the kid's got a bad cough. Let's just give them a bit of calpol here. Yeah. But a family isn't a family like God's family unless there's discipline in the family. In the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, I'll read 5 through 9. And have you forgotten the encouraging words God spoke to you as his children? He said, my child, don't make light of the Lord's discipline, and don't give up when he corrects you. For the Lord disciplines those he loves, and he punishes each one he accepts as a child. And as you endure this divine discipline, remember that God is treating you as his own children. Who ever heard of a child who's never disciplined by its father? If God doesn't discipline you as he does all his children, it means that you're illegitimate and you're not really his children at all. Since we respected our earthly fathers who disciplined us, shouldn't we submit even more to the discipline of the Father of our spirits and live forever? You'll know if you're in a healthy family because a healthy family practices disciplines. And so, are these families healthy? But is this family healthy? And let's be honest, discipline, it's a problem when discipline is always the starting point is 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Because discipline is day in and day out. Like we brought up our girls, we disciplined them every single day, depending on their age. You're disciplining your kids every day to live according to the values of this household. And then when they're clear that they've overstepped the boundaries, then there has to be consequences, proportionate. And so that's family, but in the life of the church as well, then we need to have that every day. The saints and the deacons and everybody spurring one another to, here's what it looks like. Here's what it looks like to be part of this family. And for them, I'm going out, oh, my boyfriend wants to go to this, so weekend away, etc., etc. Actually, it's not the formal discipline. You're wanting your saints and your elders to say, I don't think that's what followers of Jesus are going to do. Can I explain to you why? Can we help you, etc.? So if you're a guest in our house, like Nadine was in recently, but she quickly became family. Guests don't stack the dishwasher. They don't vacuum up. They don't do the washing. These guys from America were with us for 2 months. You did your own washing and stuff like that because they're family, right? They're family. And in the life of the church, as people become family, they have to take on responsibilities. And there has to be discipline. And that's why I remember my first 1 Corinthians 5, my first was 4:12, a worship leader moving in with his girlfriend. It was Andrew that made sure that I loved the guy, followed the Father's ways, loved on him, but had to say to the church, we need to hand him over now. We need to hand him over now and pray for his return, pray for his restoration. So does this church know how to discipline? There's a manual 412 has, what the Bible teaches on discipline, 1-to-1, 2-to-1, the church, etc. Does it know? Does it need help? It's not the most popular message to do, but actually could be the most helpful message in many instances. And I'm almost finished here. An open home. I'll finish at 11. Is that okay, Ryan? Yeah. And then, I think when I think about families, I think about a family with an open home. God's given us homes. We need to have an attitude of generosity and openness with our homes. As John Piper would say, brothers, we're not professionals. I may have a little office in my home, but my home's open for people to come through. Jesus' ministry was in homes and in the marketplace. When I had 4 daughters at home, for some reason, all these young guys were coming by our house. Can I cut your grass? Can I wash your car? That's all stopped. In fact, it didn't even start with Nick. But offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. It's challenging. We just got new carpet down, painted the walls, had this family of 3 girls come into the house. They left the house, and then, they found the pens. They found where we just decorated that wall. And these are just little, it's like the cheese grater, But, you'll have a nice dinner set if you're a Brit. But the dinners, the big plates are ready here, missing 1, missing 2. You realize, it's about people, it's not about stuff. You have to open your home. My 3rd daughter, Megan, graduates on the 1st of July with a history degree from Queen's in Belfast. It took her almost 2 years to find a church in Belfast. She thought she had found one. She went back to the one her dad told her at the beginning, okay? But she thought she had found one, and in September time when college started, she writes a note to the lead elder saying, I see that you're asking about community groups. I want to join a community group, because nobody's inviting her to their house, and never, girl in a different country, nobody's inviting homes or anything like that. At the end of September, the pastor stands up at the front of the church, true story, says, thank you for everybody. Our community groups start next week, and if you weren't successful in joining the community group, we'll have new ones starting in January, and you can apply again then. Who wants to plant a church in Belfast? Yeah. Yeah. And that was the hip and trendy church. Our homes need to be, our homes for, it's only actually a South African guy with his people, Johan Bazaki and his wife, Andrea. They have taken, because we know them, they have taken her under their wing and invited them home and stuff. That's the only church. I remember when Nelson and his wife, who's a doctor, arrived from Nigeria in our church, I said, hey, Nelson, because I wasn't leading the congregation at the time, so I said to Chris, I'll help you on Fridays pastorally, Friday afternoons. So I said to Nelson in church, hey, you can come to my house for lunch. You haven't got a car yet? I'll pick you up. So Thursday night he says, pick me up at the school. right? Pick me up at the school where my kids are. So anyway, I go to the school where his kids are. His wife's a doctor. She couldn't get off. I don't know, even asking that question. He had asked, I've been invited for Friday lunch at my house. And so I go to the school, and there's Nelson coming out with his 2 kids, and they've told the headmaster of the school, the man of God has invited us to his home for lunch. He said, they call me the GO, the General Overseer, yeah? And so, like all these messages going back to Nigeria, the GO. Yeah. He said, I couldn't even get to speak to my last pastor's PA. But you're inviting me into your home. No, he didn't eat the soup. Like, I didn't realize that when Brits say soup and Nigerians say soup, that's 2 different things. But I did buy the kids McDonald's, yeah. Yeah. And then, are their homes open? Or, is it the office? Come and see me at the office. Are people coming through their homes? Are people staying in their homes? And most people are a blessing. These guys from America, Josh and Crystal, absolute blessing, They knew how to stack the dishwasher, unstack the dishwasher. Yeah, great. What? To cut the grass. Unfortunately, it was winter. But you're welcome to fly back now. Yeah. Yeah. And Nadine comes in as family, But are our homes, when I think of family, what does it look like in this church? Are they want me to stay in a hotel? I mean, the last 2 times we stayed with people, we've been sleeping in the lead couple's bed. We were in London with Ashley and Rian, our newest partner, and we were sleeping in we were in Gauteng, the land of almond milk and honey, Branston, yes? Yeah, money, yeah. And we were in there. They went somewhere else. At the moment, 3. We're staying with Dave and Keena. We're in there. Yeah, so is that lens is it an open house? I don't know what you're thinking about when you go into kind of help the church. Is it healthy? But is this how they're living? Are people coming through their houses? People staying in their houses? Will they give up their own bedroom for somebody else? These are the simple lenses. And then, when I think about a family, it takes a village. A village is the last phrase in my mind, that we can't raise a family by ourselves. I thought having 3 or 4 congregations on the Isle of Man, that, I was the bee's knees. But then I realized, hey, I'm not complete. I need a field. So the word's really a field rather than a village, but anyway. But it takes a village. I need a field to be in. Just as every saint needs a church to be planted in, every church needs a field to be in, to be healthy. Actually, elders can't get their saints fully healthy. I had to just realize that. It's 411 gifts that are needed to get the saints through their elders often, but often even directly. Yeah, and so that's what we have seen. And, since our first conference, Andrew sending 70 people up to the Isle of Man. There was a village that came, a little village. And our people, the village people. Yeah. It was a village that transformed us, that got us healthy. It was by seeing my way of life and my doctrine, but we often forget about my way of life. Couples saying, oh, we want to have marriages like them. We want to have kids like their kids. We want to be devoted the same way. It's their only vacation this year, and all their money is going and paying their own way to the UK and the Isle of Man, just so that this church can begin a process of getting healthy. It takes a village, and then as Paul says in 2 Corinthians 8:5 about the Macedonians, I think they exceeded our expectations. They gave themselves first of all to the Lord, and then they gave themselves by the will of God to us. And that's what needs to happen for a church to be healthy. I know your saints have given themselves to the local elders, but here Paul is saying, as leading a field and a translocal team, your people have given themselves to us. Our people have given themselves to Andrew. Our people have given themselves, and Nadine, recognizing the grace gift, that so have given themselves to Ryan. When they come in, they give themselves. That's how the church is going to get healthy. Not that we just hang out together as we are this week, but our saints, as they go on outreaches together and there's cross-pollination, they are giving themselves to us. So there's many ways that you could help a church become a little bit more healthy. And you could look at Mark Deaver's book and stuff like that, 9. Another lens I just bring before you, it's family. I think that's my favorite kind of picture and motif of God. The Father has brought us into his household. We're now reconciled to him, sons and daughters of the King. On earth, we represent what's happening in heaven. How's that going in our congregations, Ryan?